הלילה רד ליל סער על המים. ילד הספינה לצד נוטה מזעף רוח, על אם הדרך עץ עמד, אין ציץ ואין תפוח. אל זה העץ אי פעם בן אבי אמך הגיע, בצל ערבית בעץ קינן, ובד הוא לא הניע. קדש בו ראש אבי אמך, פניו לירושלים, נשא בבכי תפילת מנחה, עם אלוהיו בשניים.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this unveiling ceremony. And it's kind of an unusual ceremony. It doesn't happen every day, and certainly I don't think I've ever been to one of my own. I want to welcome specifically Lilka, my wife here, sitting here, my family, my brother Emil, Vivian, his wife, next to Daniel, his son, and on my side of the family, you know, I have Lana and Kimberly and Michelle. Lana's husband James is here all the way from New Jersey just to be here for the event. Their friend Jennifer, Ina, everybody. Want to welcome my grandchildren. They don't even look very embarrassed. It's okay. You want me to start singing? That'll embarrass you. No. And I certainly want to welcome all the friends of my parents who are here and CHI staff. You know, I'm so happy to see all of you. This was not mandatory. You are here on your own free will, right? Okay, it's not mandatory. My host daughter, Alenka, Amit, her husband, is here. Yanka, my other host daughter. We hosted them for a year. You think the unveiling is tough. The person I want to introduce to you now is Rabbi Daniel Isaacson, and it's very important. I have to introduce you, Dasha. She's member of the board, Ina, member of the board of directors, and I was in love with Dasha when I was 11, and she was like 10. We were looking at each other, didn't know what love was, but she looked awfully nice on that balcony. Was I older? Was I 12? Oh, 12. I was sorry, 12, 13. You can correct me. It's okay. I'm not accurate. So today I want you to relax, okay? It's a celebration of, oh, sorry, I missed Charles, my nephew. Sorry. Did I say Steve? Where is Steve? Oh, Steve. Oh, Kimberly's husband, Steve. Sorry. What is it?
Isabella.
Yeah, Isabella is here too with Charles. I'm happy to see her. Who is minding the shop?
The dog.
That's actually the dog. Actually, that's a Jewish joke, you know. Tell you later. Anyway, it is a celebration of joy and sadness, but most of all, it's a celebration of remembrance. We have to remember things. If we forget them, they tend to repeat themselves. And I was going to tell you later, but we don't have much time before Rabbi has to leave. So I'll tell you that later about relationship between history and the Jewish people. It's a special kind of a thing. But so what we'll do next is we'll unveil my parents' gravestone. Before I do that, I want you to know that this gravestone here, Billy Woodward, it's Lilka's mother. Hi, Billy. She's buried right here. And so let's, where are those stones, Michelle, by the way? Later on, we'll give you, you know, instead of flowers, Jewish people put stones. That's really great because stones never go stale, you know. So we do have stones, pebbles, and we have a little dish. So let's unveil my parents'. Thank you, Emil. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of this unveil here.
Yeah, a lot of tape. The cemetery did it.
Oh, Jesus.
As you can see, we are not very good at unveiling because we don't have much experience. Okay, this is the gravestone for my parents, and I don't want to boast too much, but with the help of lots of people, I designed this whole thing. But I'll tell you more about people who helped me on the way. So I'll tell you a little bit about my parents, but before I do, I want you to sort of understand why this looks this way. As you know, my parents were born in Czechoslovakia. Their first 2/3 of their lives were really rough, roiling, sort of like an angry ocean, which is what you see here on the left. I'll tell you why that was. Then, when they retired, my dad was 66, my mom was 62, they came to California, the paradise on earth. So the roiling sea stopped and beautiful wave. This is California, you know, started right here, and here they are in California. So this exemplifies their lives before they came here, and this is the life. The last third of their lives is this. Yeah, so you understand the thoughts behind the whole thing. I'll tell you a little bit about my parents. They were both born in Eastern Europe. My dad was born in Bratislava, the same city where Emil, Dasha, myself were born. And he was born into a poor family. His father did not have a trade, unlike his grandfather, who was a bootmaker and shoemaker. His father was very religious, and he was a cantor in a synagogue, which means he was singing, and he was cleaning the synagogue, and maybe he was organizing bar mitzvah parties. I don't know that. But whatever he was doing, it didn't bring in much money. So the family was always poor. Moreover, when my dad was 3 years old, his mother died. So suddenly there was a man with 7 children, and that was, I don't think he could really handle this well. So the family really fell on hard times. However, everybody in that family knew how to sing, and sing well. They would sit around dinner table and compete who could sing the better operetta, which was probably in German or Hungarian. We wouldn't understand it. And when my dad was something like 9, 10, 11, 12, his voice was so good that newspapers wrote about him as the new Caruso, famous opera singer. And he would go around Slovakia and sing in synagogues. He was paid so much money for this that he actually made the most money in the whole family. Not only they would give him money, they would give him clothes, boots, you know, clothes, whatever, in addition to money. So he was singing and singing and singing. Unfortunately, he was singing when his voice was changing. So it damaged his voice. It was still a good voice, but no longer operatic quality. However, he was very smart, very sharp, worked very hard, and his father thought, this is gonna be the intellectual of the family. He's gonna become the rabbi. And so he sent my dad into yeshiva, which is sort of like a university for rabbis. Now my dad was there and started listening to other people. Suddenly he heard about Marx, communism, stuff like that. And his political views started to change to the left. Then one day he came home and he told his dad, "Dad, I no longer believe." He said, "What? You don't believe? Out of my house." And they didn't speak for like 5 years after that. So my dad, though, was not completely sure that God would take this lightly, that he left yeshiva. Maybe he'll get smitten. So for the rest of the day, he was walking around the city waiting to be struck by lightning or mowed down by a car or something as a punishment. Nothing happened. So a couple of years later, he joined the Communist Party, and he also got a trade as a printer. And then the war came. Now, during the World War II, my father was in the underground as a printer. He was printing all kinds of false IDs, for people to get, so wouldn't be caught by the Nazis. But they caught him in December of 1944 when, the Gestapo caught him when they were exchanging ID cards. They sent him over to a gathering camp, and they sent him to concentration camp Sachsenhausen in Germany, later Bergen-Belsen, and then he was on a transport to Augsburg to work on Messerschmitt airplanes. And he almost died. Actually, although he was in concentration camps only 4 months altogether, at the very end, they marched them out west, and at the end he was just walking on his four. He could not even walk standing up, and he thought this would be his end. And just that day, he was liberated by the American army. So he didn't die. If he had, I wouldn't be standing here. He had a lot of experience. Now, his very first wife died in a concentration camp. And my mother, he met her, he knew her before. My dad was a scout leader too, by the way. They later married, and my mother, after she got out of her concentration camp, where she was for 3 years, over 3 years, she wanted to go to America. And she told me, if I had gone to America, I would have been a millionaire. But my dad, being a good Marxist, he said, listen, we have this unique opportunity to build socialism in Czechoslovakia, better life for everybody, when nobody will be prejudiced against anybody else, when nobody will be judged by religion, where there will be no crass poverty. We have this chance to build that society. Let's stay here in Czechoslovakia and build this new society. My mother said, no, I want to go to America. No, he convinced her. They stayed in Czechoslovakia. Communists took power, and everybody was excited about 4 years. But by 1951, the whole thing collapsed. The communists started killing each other. There were trials, Stalinist trials. My father realized that he made a big mistake. By that time, though, he could not come to America with my mother because the whole country was surrounded by 500 volts of electricity, and he would try to get out, you'd get electrocuted, so they were stuck. They were stuck in there. So they worked there all their lives. There were only government jobs. There was no private enterprise, and they could not travel. But once you retired, suddenly the state let you go. Why? Because they knew you were not coming back, so it wouldn't have to pay you your pension. How clever, right? They took their apartment and all the furniture and everything. That's a great savings for the state. So when my dad was 66, my mom was 62, they came to America. Their pension was canceled. Their apartment was gone, but they were here with us, which was their, main thing. My dad was a writer, prolific writer. He wrote something like 15 books, theater plays. His last book was his autobiography called Once There Was a Street Here. The book was published 3 times in Czechoslovakia, which was now free, and it sold out every time. So we translated it in English, but it needs to be edited, and then we'll emit it here. It's a fascinating book. My mom came from a very loving family in eastern Slovakia, which today is western Ukraine, by the way. If she had stayed there, she would be in Ukraine. But her father, they moved to Bratislava, to the big city, capital of Slovakia, and he was a tailor by trade. And he taught his daughters, including my mother, how to be a dressmaker, how to sew, which my mother hated to do because she wanted to be in the office, she wanted to be a manager, something like that. So much so that her father actually, and this is a funny story about my mother, her father sent her to a very expensive high-level gymnasium, they call it gymnasium, which is like private high school, called Notre Dame. Now by name you can tell right away this was a Catholic high school, right? But my mom really excelled, and I have a funny story from there. When they did the class photograph, the photographer tried to line up the people, and there was the principal and the Monsignor. He wanted the most Catholic-looking girl to be in a front row between Monsignor and the principal. They picked my mother. And we have that photograph. And if you look at all these people, this Jewish woman looked most Catholic, if you imagine Mary, you know. Of course, Mary was Jewish, but, right?
Miriam.
Miriam. She was there in the middle of the front row, looking like Virgin Mary. And there you go, we have that picture. What is it? Blonde hair, long blonde wreaths, and nice little black cocktail dress. And she looked so innocent. It was really amazing. Anyway, the war came. They took her sister Katka to the concentration camp. My mother didn't want her to be alone, so she turned herself in. They went together. And by April 2nd, 1942, they were both in Auschwitz. Of course, they didn't know what the hell that was. They thought they went to work. That's what the Germans said. We're going for labor, work. In fact, some women would dress nicely with the high heels so they would get a better job. Well, once they came to Auschwitz, they got shaved. They took all their clothes, suitcases, everything. They were suddenly slaves in that camp. And so my most people survived a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Libusha's mom was there. They knew each other. My mom and Libusha too survived over 3 years in Auschwitz. The first year and a half were really horrible, and the second year and a half, because she knew how to sew through connections, everything was through connections, she got herself into a sewing circle called the Upper Tailoring Studio. And they were sewing high fashion couture for high German Nazi women. And so that's where she was the last year and a half. And a British writer, Lucy Adlington, interviewed my mom because my mom was last living dressmaker from Auschwitz. She interviewed my mom and wrote a book, Dressmakers from Auschwitz, which basically features my mother and photographs, you know, from our albums. And it's been translated now into 21 languages, which is really amazing, including Russian, Portuguese, you name it. So my mom is becoming famous after she died. So that's why it says the last dressmaker of Auschwitz. The other part of their life that was really very disturbing was that they had to live in Czechoslovakia under socialism. Now, you don't know what it means to live under socialism. You know, like lack of everything, long lines, had to be careful what you say. Emil? Two lives. You have a private life that nobody knows about, and public life where you just say what they need you to say. So after they retired, they were permitted to go out. They came here. We bought them a little house in San Rafael, and that's where they lived the 1/3 of their lives in peace. In fact, name of this hill, this cemetery, is called Shalom, which means voice of peace. And so, in fact, my mom was sitting there with Lilka right on this bench a couple of years ago. It's really amazing. So the end of their life ended like that curve on the gravestone. You know, it was good. We were with them. They were with us. They got to know their grandchildren. Emil's mine, and this is what they really wanted. Although they lost everything, they gained everything. They gained us. They gave peace. You know, and they loved. You still remember her, right? Yes, right. I miss her cuisine. She was a great cook, right? Yeah. I'm so sorry. Although Emil knows how to do most of her dishes, but it's kind of, I can't rely on him. So I can. So this is sort of in short. In 1999, my mother wrote an autobiography. I translated it in English. I added maps, photographs, stories. They're wonderful stories. Some are for children from her youth and all that. Yesterday I pasted a QR code on the side of this. So after we finish, you can go there and take the picture of the QR code, and you can read her wonderful autobiography, which is really touching, even good for children. So that's, in a kind of a nutshell, the life of my parents. I promised my mother, and I'm going to ask the rabbi to say a blessing for them.
Good.
Okay? Rabbi Daniel.
Thank you, and thank you for that lovely history. I knew both Leo and better Betka, you know,
Yes.
like here.
Yeah, when they were up there, right?
I'm the rabbi at Jewish Family and Children's Services.
Right.
And one of the things we do, we have a Holocaust Center, and we have programs for Holocaust survivors. And so I knew for holidays, when they would come to some programs and we would celebrate holidays together.
Yes.
And I was here, it's a little under 2 years ago, when we laid Betka to rest here, and now we have this memorial for her, and we'll get to her their whole family and community.
Right.
But first I want to ask you to rise if it's okay, if you're comfortable doing so we can say the memorial prayer for Leo and Betka.
Yes.
It's okay.
You can remain sitting.
It's okay. Okay. First in Hebrew and then in English. El male rachamim shochen b'meromim hametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashchina v'malot kedoshim o tehorim k'zo ha'akia mazhirim et nishmat Levi ben Adolf HaKohen ואת נשמת בטקה חיה ברוכה בת שלום וחווה שהלכו לעולמם בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם אנא בעל הרחמים הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים ותרו בצרור החיים את נשמתם אדוני הוא נחלתם V'yanuchu v'shalom al mishkavam v'nomar amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the souls of Leo KOHN Kohut and Berta Betka BERKOVIC Kohut, who have gone to their eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved ones find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May they rest in peace together. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
And you can be seated. We're gonna turn our attention now to the left side here. Do you want to open it first? Why don't we open it first?
Yeah,
And
go
then-
ahead. Emil, do you want to help?
Now, I think for the sake of time, I'm going to speak,
Yes.
and then I'm going to say Kaddish, and then we'll
Okay.
recite names.
All right.
So I don't want to have to.
Yeah, I'll do that after
Not be
Kaddish.
able to
Let's
do
do it
that.
after Kaddish.
Yeah. And is this the same on both sides?
No, the other side has the names.
Oh, okay. All right, you have that?
I got it. I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, please tell them what Kaddish is.
We're gonna say Kaddish. I'm gonna say a few words, but first, Tom's gonna read the names in a moment. First, I just want to read this part here.
Yes, I have that written down.
You have that?
Here, you can read it from this page.
Okay. This cenotaph, I'm reading from here, enshrines the memory of the 57 members of the BERKOVIC and the KOHN families who perished in the World War II Holocaust between 1942 and 1945. They were forcibly removed from Slovakia and Hungary and murdered by the German National Socialist Nazis in the concentration camps of Auschwitz, Majdanek, Sobibor, Ravensbrück, and Horgau. Their ashes scattered to the wind, their blood soaked by the earth. They were killed only because they were Jewish. We will never forget. Inscribed by Leo Levi, KOHN Kohut, Bertka Chayabracha, BERKOVIC Kohut, Thomas KOHN, Kohut Araton, Emil KOHN, Kohut Araton, 2021. This cenotaph was created by Tom and Lilka Araton, whose lives are dedicated to building bridges of friendship and understanding among nations. Names of the victims are immortalized on the back of this cenotaph. And we will read them in a moment. Tom will read them in a moment. We'll also read Mourner's Kaddish, which is also here, which you also have. But first I wanted to highlight something Tom said about remembering. You know, it just so happens that this coming Shabbat, tomorrow, in synagogues all around the world, we're reciting of 3 verses, part of the Torah reading, 3 verses that recalls, I'll read it in a moment, an episode when the Israelites left Egypt. They were slaves in Egypt, they left Egypt. And they were, you know, they were newly freed. They were getting their bearings, and they were attacked by a group of people called Amalek. And Amalek, since then, has represented the people in every generation like Amalek, which in Betka and Leo's generation was Hitler. And so we read this. I'll read it from the Torah, and I'll say a little bit about it. Zachor et asher asah lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey, b'derech b'tzeitcha miMitzrayim, when you left Egypt. How undeterred by fear of God he surprised you on the march, when you were famished and weary and weak, and cut down all of those stragglers, those who were diminished in your rear. Therefore, when your God grants you safety from all your enemies around you, in the land that your God is giving you as a hereditary portion, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. Lo tishkach. Don't forget. So it remembers with Zachor, remember, and it ends with Lo tishkach, never forget. And these 3 verses, the rabbis, this is over 3,000 years ago. And what we're doing today is this. I'm giving greater context to what it is we're doing today. We're doing something that over 3,000 years ago was commanded to the Israelites to do, which was to zachor, remember, and lo tishchach, never forget. And these three verses, we read them tomorrow all around the world, and then there's one other time during the year that just these three verses are added on to the Torah portion. It's right before the holiday of Purim. And it's considered one of the most important readings of the whole year. And why is it read before Purim? Purim we think of as a very, happy holiday.
Joyous, yeah.
But remember what the story of Purim is about. It's about Haman, Haman, seeking to destroy, to wipe out all the Jews. It's true in such a large degree that it's kind of like the joy of the holiday. It's almost like it's too painful. You either cry or laugh. There's a little bit of that in the Purim holiday because there's a truth in the story of Purim, which is that in every generation there's a Haman. And in the story of the book of Esther, Haman, it says, came from Amalek. So it makes that link from Amalek to Haman, and certainly in our day to Hitler. And so it is an important and wonderful thing to make the monument, but that's just like half of it. Because it's all incumbent on all of us, and it's great to see so many younger people here. It's incumbent on all of us to zachor, remember, and lo tishchach, to never forget. And we've been doing it for over 3,000 years, and it's crazy, but it's true that in every generation there is reason to remember. Not just back in history, but not long ago. So what we're doing today is really standing in a very, very, very long line of remembering, and it will continue. God willing. One of the things we do at Jewish Family and Children's Services is we have the Holocaust Center, which is the biggest resource in Northern California for Holocaust studies, for going into schools, for teaching about genocide, the Holocaust specifically, and also about genocide more generally. Because of this millennium-old mandate to keep memory alive and to remember. So with that, I want to read another memorial prayer. And this memorial prayer is for, it's really for the 6 million. It's specific for the victims of the Shoah, for the victims of the Holocaust. So again, I'm going to ask you to stand. You don't have to. You don't have to. No pressure. If it's okay, please stand. This time I'm going to read it in English first and then in Hebrew. God, full of mercy, who dwell in the heights, shelter beneath your wings of your presence, high among the holy and the pure, who shine like the brilliant leaves, shelter them. Shelter the souls of our sisters and brothers of the house of Israel who were slaughtered in the Shoah, small children, women, men, strangled, suffocated, burned to ash. They revered your name, their souls passed into your care. Let Eden be their resting place. Master of mercy, drape them and keep them forever in your sheltering presence. Bind their souls to the living and to life. God, you are their inheritance. Where they rest, ease them with peace. And let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bameromim. המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמות כל אחינו בית ישראל, שנטבחו בשואה, אנשים, נשים וטף, שנחנקו ושנשרפו ושנהרגו, שמסרו את נפשם על קידוש השם. בגן עדן תהי מנוחתם. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירם בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן. And in a moment, Tom is going to read the names.
Yes.
Um,
I know you have to leave it.
Why don't you read the names and then we'll say
And then you do the Kaddish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Kaddish, which is the mourner's prayer for the dead.
And if
You can sit down.
Well, stay. I'm going to ask you to
will
stand up for Kaddish.
for
so
their
you can
names. Okay.
do what you want. But
So altogether, our family had 63 members. And of the 63 members, 57 died in concentration camps, mostly by gas, and then they were burned. Some were executed by firing squads, and some died of typhus or tuberculosis, which was rampant in those camps. But most of them just died in gas chambers. And their names are on the back side of this memorial, so feel free afterwards to walk around the memorial and look at it from behind, okay? Also feel free to take the QR code. I'm going to read the name of the people who died. They're all related to us. So starting by age, Ignaz BERKOVIC, his wife Regina. They were born in 1866 and 1869. Children of Ignaz and Regina were Solomon BERKOVIC, that was my grandfather, and Carolina Stern BERKOVIC was my grandmother. It was interesting to note that I call them grandparents, but Solomon, when he died, my grandpa was only 41, and my grandmother was only 39, so really young. Then other children of Solomon and Carolina was Emil, Irena, and Moritz. He was the youngest boy. Then there was another brother, Israel Levi BERKOVIC, and his son, Joseph BERKOVIC, Herman BERKOVIC, and 2 children. And then there were brothers of Ignaz BERKOVIC. Moritz BERKOVIC and his 5 children died. Itzik Wolf BERKOVIC, his wife and 2 children. Shimon BERKOVIC, his wife Chaya, and 10 children. Osher Anchel BERKOVIC, his wife Dina, and 2 children. Then on the grandmother's side, Carolina Stern, Serenka Abraham, husband and daughter, and their daughter Regina. Jenya Shochna, her husband. Jenner Stern, his wife and 2 children. Samuel Stern. And then on my father's family, the KOHN family members who perished in the Holocaust is Adolf KOHN, it's my grandfather on my father's side, stepmother Franziska Waldmann KOHN, and the children of Adolf KOHN, Joseph and wife Henrik, Arnold, Hermina, David, and Jacob. And also who died was my father's first wife, Kathy Reichenberg KOHN. She died of not tuberculosis, what was the other? Typhus. She died of typhus. My mother met her there too. She didn't think that her husband was alive anymore. So these were the names of 57 members of our family who perished in the Holocaust. So I'd like to ask Rabbi Daniel to tell the Kaddish, the prayer for the dead.
Thank you. And you have it, so you can join me. I actually want to read it from this, the
little
monument
card
itself. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chaye KOHN u'v'yomei KOHN u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ul'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudesha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata de'amiran be'alma v'imru amen Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim tovim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
On the back of the little thing, it's in English, so you can read it in English. You can sit down.
You know what I'll do is, since I do have a little time, I can go ahead and read this. I can conclude with
Oh,
this.
you want to read this? Oh, okay,
and then I'll
great.
hand it off to you.
Okay, great.
And I want to conclude, I'm going to have to go after this, but I want to conclude with a prayer that I adapted from the late Chief Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks from the UK with regard to remembering the Holocaust. Today at this sacred gathering, we remember the victims of the greatest crime of man against man, the young, the old, the innocent, the 1.5 million children, starved, shot, given lethal injections, gassed, burned, and turned to ash because they were deemed guilty of the crime of being different. We remember what happens when hate takes hold of the human heart and turns it to stone. What happens when victims cry for help and there is no one listening. What happens when humanity fails to recognize that those who are not in our image are nonetheless in God's image. We remember and pay tribute to the survivors who bore witness to what happened and to the victims, so that, robbed of their lives, they would not be robbed also of their deaths. We remember and give thanks for the righteous of the nations who saved lives, often at the risk of their own, teaching us how in the darkest night we can light a candle of hope. Today we call on you, Almighty God, to help us hear your voice that says, in every generation, do not murder, do not stand idly by the blood of your neighbor, do not oppress the stranger. We know that while we do not have the ability to change the past, we can change the future. We know that while we cannot bring the dead back to life, we can ensure that their memories live on and that their deaths were not in vain. And so as we gather here today, we commit ourselves to one simple act, Yizkor, Zachor, remember. May the souls of the victims be bound up in the bond of everlasting life, and let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. It's very meaningful. Right now, we have time for Rabbi has to leave. He has other pressing duties. I would like to invite those of you who would like to share to come forward and share with us. Nobody will judge you. I know people don't like to speak publicly. Everybody gets trepidation. Oh my God, are they gonna judge me? No, we will not judge you. I also want you to know that in Auschwitz, where Dasha's mother was and my mother, in that one concentration camp alone, 1 million people died. Imagine 1 million people in one camp only. And it's a miracle that your mother and my mother both survived. Libusha. Anyway, we are open for sharing. So anyone, like Emil, for instance, not you, sit down, Michelle wants to share.
It might be a little self-indulgent, so.
It's okay.
But I really want to say just how happy I am that our family has this Cenotaph now, and I think Babichka and Ditka would be so happy to see it. So, great work. So, this is about Babichka. I should have called her more, but it was kind of hard sometimes. Babichka had lived through so much, and the thought of calling and telling her my petty struggles always felt so ridiculous. And I was scared of the times when her honesty was too real. When she would bring up the topics that stung the most, I didn't want to hear it. Even though I knew everything she said was right, and it came from the kind of wisdom only gained from a life where simplicity and practicality literally meant life and death. She was always right, and full of love. She cared deeply for each of us. She wanted us to be happy and to tell us how we could achieve it, even if it was a harsh reality. Well, maybe happy isn't the right word. She wanted us to be content, perhaps. As this unveiling approached, I've been reflecting on the time I spent with Babichka, so basically like my whole life. I realized that every minute I spent with her, I was on my best behavior. I never wanted her to think that I would ever be naughty, lazy, self-content, self-centered, messy, or any other thing other than how I imagined she was while growing up in Chepa. Forget being a child, there's work to be done. Even when Adam and I were kids, we always made sure to clean up everything when it was time to go. Put everything back in that tiny chest with a few toys in it. And even that must have felt indulgent to her. Babichka only had a doll made of sticks as a child.
Yeah.
It was hard when she would be in the kitchen washing dishes during a meal. I'm sure Cheryl felt the same way too. That should have been us washing those dishes. That's the job of young girls in Chepa. But here we were sitting at the table while she scrubbed. It always felt so awkward. But no matter how we tried to stop her, the dishes had to be washed mid-meal. I wanted to always be perfect for her and hated any time the real me slipped through the cracks. Like when I got more piercings in my ears in college. When Babichka noticed, she said, "Why didn't you ask me?" She wasn't really mad, but I felt shame over her disapproval. Why was I always making the wrong life choices? Now that I'm living in her home, I walk amongst memories of her every day, remembering her life and her lessons. Sometimes it's motivating. Sometimes it's stressful. Am I living a life that Babichka would approve of? Probably not. Definitely not. But her life is not my life. I haven't seen the world brought down to its knees and my day-to-day needs stripped down to eating raw wheat on the side of the road to survive. After that, everything is a blessing. I can never understand that feeling. And I know Babichka would never want any of us to learn that kind of lesson. She didn't want that for us, and she never imposed that on us. She only wanted for us to find balance, contentment, and even the happiness that she seldom was granted in her life. So as I live in Babichka's house, I try to give myself grace. I did learn her lessons. Her life was the example. And she knows I'm trying. We're all trying. And I think she would be happy with that. And so I just want to share really quickly some things I loved about Babichka. I loved how she would cut all the frozen string beans in half from the frozen veggies so that they matched the peas and corn and lima beans. I won't talk about how much we all loved her food, only that I loved watching her make schnitzel, and it's in my DNA. Chicken flour. No, you know.
I know.
I loved pulling up to her house, and she was waiting on the front porch, mad because we were always late. This one is kind of odd, but this moment really impacted me. I love the time that she casually told me how she and the youngest children in Chepa had the chore of drowning the new kittens in the river. It was so brutal and so nonchalant. When I asked her why, she simply stated it was better than letting them starve to death. That's really impactful.
Yeah, totally.
I'm almost done. I love the time she threw her head back and laughed with reckless abandon. I've seen tears falling from her eyes, laughing. And I love that she was always ready for an adventure. From shaved ice in Hawaii to sawing down a Christmas tree, she always wanted to be in the action and fully participate in life. And that's probably what saved her through it all.
Thank you, Michelle. It was beautiful. Okay, before the next person comes, I have a message for Marine IJ readers about Cenotaph. This Cenotaph is from Greek. Cenotaph means empty grave. And there are very few real cenotaphs in the world. Okay, there is one in London, was built in 1920 for all the soldiers of Commonwealth and Great Britain who died, and they never found their bodies, you know, because that's what it really means. There is one actually in Dallas honoring a president who was shot nearby. There's a cenotaph there, although he does have a grave. The most famous one is probably in Hiroshima. When we dropped the atomic bomb, it wiped out thousands of people, and that's a cenotaph, real cenotaph. So now San Rafael has a cenotaph. Our goal is always to put San Rafael on a world map, and we are not only doing it through one of the few cenotaphs in the world, real cenotaphs, but we also do it through our organization, Cultural Homestay International, which is in San Rafael, one of the premier student exchange organizations. You probably all know the big globe in front of the building on Miracle Mile. That is to celebrate the world. And also we have a unique Museum of International Propaganda that Lilka and I started 8 years ago in San Rafael, right there on the corner of Mission and Court Streets. So we are trying to put San Rafael on the world map. Maybe we'll succeed. That's my message for the Marine IJ readers, and we subscribe to your newspaper. Okay, so next person who would like to share. Must I? No, that's an attitude. That's an attitude. Must I? No, you don't have to, actually. No.
I'm just amazed. The structure just amazes me. And I can't talk, it's very hard. This is how you thumb the noses of Nazi Germans.
Yeah.
It is, what's the words? I kind of thought about it. It is strong and it is heavy. And that exactly was my mother's spirit. She had a very strong spirit. She, of course, as Tom described, went through growing up poor in a village, surviving the Auschwitz, living under socialism, where you couldn't buy onions once in a while for 2 months. Getting invaded by the Russians, 1968. Her life was very dramatic, to say the least. But her spirit was strong and she always survived. She always pulled. And it's heavy. her spirit was heavy because as she got older, she got more bitter about this whole situation. She lost all her family, but the two of them, and it weighed on her
Yeah.
a lot. As she got older, she just kept asking why. There was one of the only questions she had, why? And she realized, watching the news, watching the world around her, the wars never stopped. People kept killing each other. And she basically was saying this: people are not nice to each other. They should be, but they're not. And, you know, I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but it was like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The way she died. Kaiser. They did not treat her nice. They refused to give her a life-saving remdesivir medication. And I'm a 40-year pharmacist. I told them. They didn't listen because the bottom line was more important than saving her life. $3,000. They would not give it to her. 2 days later, they would not give it to her again because of complete utter incompetence of another doctor. And she suffered for 30 days in ICU. I was horrified. She did not deserve to die suffering on high flow oxygen. And it weighs on me. She's gone. Because I feel I failed. I always found solutions to problems, but I couldn't. I couldn't go against Kaiser. I couldn't figure it out. Couldn't explain to them, medicate her, and they wouldn't. So that's part of the tragedy here, you know? But then again, look, I did take it up on myself. I spent a lot of time with my mother for 70 years, right? And I realized, you know, the real treasure, besides her being around her and hearing her voice, interacting with her and everything else, was those recipes. It really was. And the person's got to eat, right? And that's what I grew up on the last 7 years, so just about. So I really retained those recipes, the cooking. And that's what I do. That's my connection to her. Schnitzels, spinach. And about 20 other things, right? Baking, collage, you know. That's my connection to her. Because food was very important to her. She loved to cook. It was a big part of her life. You know, it's sort of dumb, but you know, we have to eat, right? And interestingly enough, I thought about it. I'm really a product of both of my parents. Because on the other side, I became a writer just like my father. I mean, real, you know, not published, but writer. So it's like it's uncanny in some ways that I do both. I do the cooking for my mother, I do the writing for my father. And that's how I want to remember them, as the inspiration, in my life. And that's going to be until I die. And that's that. So thank you for listening.
Let me give you a hug. It wasn't your fault, Emil. It wasn't your fault. I know it's hard to accept. Okay, next, Lana.
Next, I'm crying.
I think it's gonna give you a microphone.
Oh, I can be loud.
She couldn't come. I talked to her last night. Her doctor told her it would be too much.
Who is this?
Miriam
Miriam?
offered to come because it was too much. You can sit down
Sit in
over
here.
This is
Wow. So touching. Your speeches were both so touching, and I didn't get to say goodbye to Babishka either at her burial. I did get to say goodbye to Babishka about a week before she passed away. I came into the hospital and she saw I was there. She woke up, she perked up, she made a joke. She said she'd rather be seeing her cleaning lady, Rafaela, because then she'd be in her own bed and in her own home right now. So she wished she could see her right now in her bed and in her home. It was very touching. I said, "You're getting better, Babishka," because they had reduced the oxygen down, and she turned to me and she said, "No." And to me, that felt that maybe she was actually ready to let go. And so I took that as a sign that she was okay with where she was and that it was time. Babishka meant a lot to me, even though, I had my first grandmother on my mother's side, Billy. And Babishka didn't really come fully into my life until I was about... I met her really for the first time when I was in second grade. When you were 2. And when I was 2, but I knew her better in second grade, and I went to live with them in Germany by myself for a month. Was it a month? It was like a long time. And it was young, and they let me sleep in between them in the bed every night, and took care of me, and and they were so strange to me as a little American with these European grandparents. But we learned to forge a path, and as I grew up with them, and I was older when they finally came, I learned to appreciate them more from an adult perspective and see their value that way. And I'm sorry, Babishka, I don't like cooking. But I do, yes, I don't. But I do make your food because my sweet youngest daughter, Kalina, loves cooking. And she loves Babishka spinach and her chicken schnitzel. So that's what I want to say about Babishka. I do want to say a little bit about the Cenotaph, which I wrote down here. Sorry, my nose is running because I'm sniffling. I know, but then we're both using a sniffly nose together. But okay, sorry.
It's in the family.
It's in the family, right? So I had something to say about the Cenotaph. As a therapist and life coach, my job is to help people to heal great trauma. And I have had to heal. Maybe not great trauma, but I've had to heal. And why should we work to heal the great anger and grief we feel from the Holocaust? Holding on to anger and grief blocks our thoughts, our energy, and our creativity. Healing frees us to live a fuller, truer, and more authentic life. Healing, sadly, and this is the difficult part, involves feeling pain, crying, sharing, yelling, letting sadness carve into our being, as our dear Khalil Gibran says. Some pain and anger are generational, and the Holocaust is generational. But it is our generation's time to heal it, to grow, and to feel this pain and begin to move through it. So I invite all who witness the cenotaph to let it be a healing monument, a place where tears can be shed, fists can be shaken, crying can be heard, letters can be written, a place where that rift in our hearts and our mind can be made whole again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Microphone.
And anybody else?
Thank you.
Board of directors, and we've known each other for, I don't want to say it, 60 years, 55 years.
More than that.
More than that, okay.
Yeah.
70, whatever.
So I knew Braha all my life. I was born in Bratislava, Slovakia, and I grew up part of my life with Tom and Emil. I remember when I was a very little girl, my mother cut my bangs, and I was very upset. We only lived half a block from each other. And Braha, I happened to meet her on a street, and she knew me enough to say, "What's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you so upset?" Said to me, "My mother cut my hair. I hate it." And she said, "Don't worry. In 2 weeks, it'll be as it was before." And she said, that she used to call me Dashenka, means little Dasha.
Little Dasha.
She said to me, "You know, Dasha, I have 2 boys. I always wanted a girl. You could be my girl." And so for rest of my life, I was her girl. When we left Czechoslovakia in 1966, 1966 we came to America. I haven't seen her until they came to America then. But my mother and her were corresponding. And it was after we came to America and after Braha and Leo came to America, I found out more about their lives. They actually met each other before Second World War in Bratislava. My mother was sent there to be apprentice to a tailor. And she, Braha was older than my mother, a couple of years.
Right.
And they went to concentration camp only 3 weeks apart. My mother was in a first transport, and Braha came a couple of weeks later. So my children, because we had a very close family, they always thought that Braha was actually our relative, that Tom and Emil, we were all related because all our lives we keep seeing each other, they keep coming over our house. I had to explain to my son a couple of years ago, we are not actually family through blood.
Although he looks at me like I'm his uncle.
Yes, it still does.
Still does.
But we are family through choice.
Right.
And that's a much stronger family. So after my mother died in 2010, Braha became my mother. She would call me on my mother's birthday. She would always start with, "Do you know what day it is?" And I was looking forward to her phone calls. We talk probably every 3 months. She wanted to be updated on the whole family. She remembered names of my cousins, of my grandkids, or where my brother worked, where I worked. I got go around the world with her every 3 months. And when she passed away, the strangest thing happened. She died in January, no, was it? February. My mother, she died before my mother's birthday. She was born in February. And I forgot that she passed. And the whole day, I was waiting for her to give me a call to remind me what day it was. So I really feel close to your babichka. She was in a way babichka to my kids too. And I'm sorry they couldn't be here today, but I have.
We are filming it, okay? They'll be able to see it.
I'll have the fondest memory. And in the last year, while she was alive, I don't know, one day we were just chatting on the phone, and I mentioned that we knew each other all my life. And she said to me, "No, I know you longer." I said to her, "How is that possible?" She said, "I met your mother on a streetcar while she was pregnant." So I could say that.
Right.
So these were just, endearing stories, because that's how I remember her. Every time I think of her, it puts a smile on my face. Right. Because I didn't have any family. My family, like yours, were all killed. Yeah. But she became my family. And I thought of her always, since I was a child, that she and you guys were my family. So thank you.
She was actually with your mother like a couple of days before your mom passed away.
Yes.
Remember she told us she combed her hair and stuff?
Yeah.
She was with her.
Yeah, so we go back a long time.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Dashka.
All right.
Beautiful. My mother was a terrific communicator, and even today people tell me, we are waiting for telephone call from your mom. It's not coming. When my mom was about 90 years old, we taught her how to use laptop computer. She fell in love with laptop, and she was 90. And what she liked the most was that laptop had a Skype, and it was for free. You could call people on Skype for free anywhere. She said this was incredible technology. She loved smartphones. She said, this phone does everything. You can even make telephone calls from it. So she was never afraid of technology or doing something. Her brain was sharp. She remembered things I don't remember. Her classmates from her third grade, she would know all their names. I don't think I could do that. Lilka, you next. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I had the two best mother and father-in-laws you could ever have. I had to meet them over there in Czechoslovakia, and I was very new to the whole situation that they lived in. And the first thing that I remember is Betka cooking. I had to eat a huge meal, lunch and dinner. I'd been dieting before I went, so I'd be perfect for them. And then after I got there, I probably gained 10 or 20 pounds just eating Betka's food. Still remember many things she cooked, including the most wonderful cakes. And she never made them while she was here, but when I was there, they were the most delicious cakes, great big cakes. She didn't make it here. Leo, he was like delighted to see me, to meet me. And he took me everywhere around Slovakia, and then he took me up to Prague and showed me all of beautiful Prague from the castle down, and taught me about all the different styles of art that you can find. Architecture, art, and they always treated me with so much kindness. One time I thought they were talking against me in Slovak, and they were like broken-hearted that I would think that they would ever do such a thing. And they totally switched to English and never spoke Slovak in front of me again. And I have to say that I'm sorry today that that happened. I wanted to learn Slovak, but I never heard it. Even Tom switched to English with them.
They
in front
respected your
of me.
paranoia.
Yeah, I was paranoid. Then they got paranoid. Anyway, we never spoke Slovak. But I have to say that I really love them both. For a while, I felt like Leo was like my father who had died. He was kind. He was musical. He was somebody you looked up to. He was a man of great integrity. He was a man of someone you could almost worship. And it was her. She was so kind to both Vivian and me. She cared about us. She never said a word against us.
Not
she
even
was,
behind your back.
well, I don't know that. Maybe to him, maybe to Leo.
Not to us.
But to us, no, I never heard a bad word. And I have to say, what a mother-in-law that never complains about her daughter. You know, it was wonderful. You could trust her.
Right.
She was so kind, both of them, and inspirational. I love them. Okay.
Thank you, Lilka.
Okay. His name is Tom.
Anyone else interested in saying a few words? We are all friends here.
Yes, I knew you would say.
Okay, this is my mother's friend, Gita Hani.
Took care of her every day.
Generational friend.
Generational friend.
Okay. My mother met Leo and Betka, I think, in 83, 84,
That's when they arrived,
first
83, yeah.
arrived. And their common language, of course, was, I shouldn't say of course, of German. My mother was Ukrainian. And they kept in touch over the years. Actually, they became pretty good friends. I remember them visiting my mom, vice versa, being invited to delicious lunches and so on. And we had a very good time. And I was part of it. And I remember talking about inspiration. Everybody talks about Betka because she's such a strong figure, but I also want to mention a couple of things about their marriage. One day, it was already, your dad was coming to the end of his life. We were at lunch at their house, and Leo said, you know, I wake up every morning and I tell my wife, I am so happy that I have you here with me every day. You are like my son. I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but it was so touching. And they were so loving, understanding of each other, accepting each other. It was really an inspiration. Not that I have a husband or anything, not even at that time, but I mean, inspiration for people to get along well, to accept each other. Family was very important for her. Her immediate family here and all the ones that she lost in the Holocaust. One thing about Leo talking about Communist Party, he said there was a lecture or something, they took them in and they were trying to tell them how bad the West was. You should never go to the West because people are awful there and it rains all the time. And the leitmotif was, it rains in the West all the time, you should not go there. And apparently there was a man over there who was going like this. And finally the lecturer, the brainwasher, said, why are you doing this? Every time I say, it's awful there, it rains all the time, he says, well, I'm just wondering if I should take my umbrella when I go. That was one of Leo's jokes, and there were many other things. And Betka was very dear, especially after Leo died. We talked on the phone every day. We saw each other all the time. And I jokingly said, you know what? I want to adopt you. I want to adopt you as my mother. My mother was gone by then. And I think that's all I can say. There is more, but it's getting warm.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Oh, that's it? Okay. I would like to, before I go, you know, was a huge project. I promised my mother about 5 years ago that I'll get this project done. And I fulfilled my promise to her. So I feel they and a whole family now belongs to history. Now, Jews and history have an interesting relationship. Now, Rabbi mentioned, he calls it Haman. It's the American pronunciation, Haman. He was a minister, but he was in Babylon. You know, when Jews were carted off to Babylon to exile, it was a minister who tried to kill him, but he got discovered, and Jews went and complained to the king, and the king got Haman. But they still had to move, and they only had 24 hours, so they packed up all they could, and they have a suite. It's a triangle filled with like marmalade or jam or poppy seeds, and it's called the Haman's bag, because they didn't have time. They had to take so little that it fit into a little Haman's bag. And it's a pastry that tastes rather good, but it's a way to learn history. And so when it feels like Jewish people, to them, history, even ancient history, is alive. And in fact, they repeat it every year. They have all kinds of holidays where they recount the same thing. We were slaves, we went to Babylon, and now, of course, the latest one is the day of Holocaust. 2,000 years from now, they will still celebrate Yom HaShoah, the day of the Holocaust. They will not let the world forget. And it's good to remember, so we don't repeat the same stupid thing, you know, all over again. We do, but anyway, there's a hope that maybe we'll stop, and that's why the rabbi didn't read the bottom of here. It says that of friendship and understanding among nations through their organization, Cultural Homestay International. That's what we do to create a better world. Before I go, I want to say something. I could not have done this by myself. Although I designed it, I had a lot of people who helped me. So I want to just mention them briefly. Of course, Lilka was always by my side, so it wouldn't have been without her. But there were people, I had people who modeled the thing, who made a model of it. I had stonemasons in China who were taking these rocks and they were carving them. I had Susan Pascal Barron, who is not here. She is the artist who made the globe in front of CHI. She is responsible for the brass plaques that I designed. She got it done. Adrian, our contractor, he poured the base, the concrete base for the Cenotaph. Huge concrete base with all these iron rods in it, so it'll stay there forever. Nicolas, another contractor, Brazilian, where 5 contractors said, no, we cannot get these stones here, you know. Nicolas said, I can do it. And they brought forklift and went among the graves and went this way. And for the other thing, they went among the graves that way. They had to get another forklift for the Cenotaph because it was bigger. So that was Nicholas. I also want to thank the Mount Tam Cemetery. They were very cooperative. They let us steal their electricity, you know, for the cement mixers and water and all that. They hooked it up for us so that we could actually do the work here. And of course, this whole hill, Kol Shalom, mean the voice of peace, is owned by a synagogue called Kol Shofar in Tiburon. They are the ones who own this whole hill and subdivided it, and which means the voice of the ram's horn that called people to pray, Kol Shofar. And I want to thank William Murad, our chief information officer, who helped me tremendously. He was liaison between the contractors and me. He was also a liaison between the Chinese stonecutters and me. And he also arranged the ocean transportation to bring the 4.5 tons of stone from China to here. He did all the paperwork. So, and he did lots of other things, so really indispensable. I'm really happy. This was a wonderful gathering. I felt really fulfilled. I'm so happy to have our Romanian partners here. I didn't know that Mihai and Alex were here. It's really nice. They said they would be here. But you know, when Romanians say it, no, he's wonderful. We've known each other for a long, long time. It's really great that they're here. So say hello to them. Feel free to walk around the Cenotaph. The back, we have, yeah, I would like you to, here are the stones.
No, there's the whole of them.
Where are they? Oh yeah, please take a stone from there and put it over. That's what the Jews do, and it's better than flowers because they never wilt. The stones stay there, so feel free. Walk around, and you can take a picture of the QR code and read my mother's memories. And after that, we will see you at CHI for some nice lunch at 255 West End Avenue, all invited. I hope we ordered enough. There's more people here than we expected. Huh? Where'd you get the stones? Michelle got them. Yeah, that's fine. You can put them. You can put it anywhere. Don't even have to put it in bowl.
I have one question. I already put my stone in.
Okay, let me get a stone.
I have a question.
Yeah.
הדרך עץ עמד נופל אפיים, נומנומה בין הלילה רד, ליל סער על המים. ילד הספינה לצד, נוטה מזעף רוח, על אם הדרך עץ עמד, אין ציץ ואין תפוח. אל זה העץ אי פעם בן אבי אמך הגיע, בצל ערבית בעץ קינן ובא